You're good.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the January 26th meeting of the Upper Gwynedd Township Zoning Hearing Board. So let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. So I just want to go over a couple of things about this e-hearing. So as permitted by Act 15, tonight's hearing is being held virtually. In addition to being stenographically recorded, tonight's hearing is being live streamed and will be available on the township's website later. I would ask that everyone please stay muted when they are not speaking. Um, all applicants for tonight's hearings were notified in advance and provided instructions on how to participate electronically. Applicants were also requested to provide copies of any exhibits they intend to use so that they could be made available for public review on the township's website before tonight's meeting. I would ask that if any applicant tonight introduces an exhibit that was not previously provided and made available on the township's website, that they make a specific note of this so that the board and the public are aware. The zoning hearing board has required that all applicants and their witnesses participate in tonight's hearing using both audio and visual capabilities. Anyone wishing to be a party to the proceedings is also invited to participate using both audio and visual capabilities. For those who wish only to provide public comment, you can participate via audio and will be permitted at the appropriate time to state your comments on the pending application. Please remember that you will need to state your name and address for the record before offering your public comment. So one thing I want to mention is that we do have reorganization tonight, so that will happen before the hearing is heard. And also, I want to go ahead here and I want to introduce our new alternate member, Rebecca Moody. And she is a project manager for Henkels and McCoy. She has lived in Upper Gwynedd for a little more than a year, and she's always wanted to be involved in local government. So we welcome you and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
And I also, oh, sorry, if you want to say something quickly, you can. No? Okay. And I also want to mention that Jack was also reappointed as well. So congratulations, Jack. So, all right, so let's go ahead here and move forward with reorganization. So give me a second to get back here to my agenda. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, first thing we'll do is nomination and election of the chair. So do we have any nominations for chair?
I nominate Mark Connolly.
And do we have any other nominations? Hearing none, I close the nominations, and all in favor of Mark Connolly as chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Bobby?
Jack, you're muted.
It doesn't say I'm muted.
Oh, no, Bobby, you're okay. Jack, oh, there you go, Jack.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, so in the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and thank you for reappointing me for another year as chair. I appreciate it. I look forward to working with all of you over the coming year. So next is we're going to go ahead with the nomination and election of vice chair. So do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Jack Ferguson.
Thank you. And do we have any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, the nomination for vice chair is closed. So all in favor of Jack Ferguson for vice chair, say aye.
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 And the ayes have it. Congratulations, Jack, for being reappointed for another year as vice chair.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay. So next thing, the next thing on the agenda is a motion to appoint Kilkenny Law LLC as solicitor. So does anyone want to go ahead and make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
And then do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have both a motion and a second on the motion to appoint Kilkenny Law LLC as solicitor. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 And the ayes so have it. Congratulations, Patrick. Your firm, Kilkenny Law LLC, has been reappointed as solicitor.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, the next item on the agenda for reorganization, and Patrick, if you could give a little bit of an explanation as to why we're doing this, and kind of walk me through how you would want me to word the motion here. So the next thing on the motion is to appoint all of the members as hearing officer, and potentially you as well, Patrick?
Correct. So as I was explained a year ago, I am an overly cautious lawyer, and the MPC does authorize you to appoint a hearing officer to hear any zoning case that comes before you. Therefore, it would be my recommendation that the board basically appoint each other to serve as a hearing officer in the event that there is a lack of a quorum of the zoning board. This way, should an application come forward and, God forbid, particularly now in light of 2020, we have to be prepared for anything, that no applicant would have to wait just because you didn't have a quorum. So therefore, I would recommend that a member of the board make a motion to appoint each of the current zoning hearing board members, as well as the zoning solicitor, to serve as a hearing officer in the event that there is a lack of a quorum. So if somebody would like to make that motion, they can make that motion.
And I guess we would also include within the members the alternate member as well, correct? I just want to.
That is correct. It would include the alternate member.
I'll make that motion for us, that we do it for the existing board, the alternate, as well as legal counsel, Patrick.
Okay, thank you, Jack. And so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second to appoint all of the members, including the alternate member and our counsel as hearing officers in the event that there's not a quorum. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, and in the opinion of the chair, the motion passes. Great. All right, so we have now completed reorganization. So let's go ahead and hear our one and only hearing for this evening. It's hearing number 21-01, and that's Mann Road Associates of 920 South Broad Street, Lansdale, Pennsylvania. And it's for a property located at the same address for a variance from section 195-12.A to convert the second floor of the existing building for use as a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. Let me clarify. For use as two 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartments. I will clarify that. The property is zoned R2 residential. So at this point, would the parties please identify themselves for the record and also counsel?
Yes, good evening, Carl Wiener, representing the applicant Mann Associates. My client is trying to get in, and I am, if you'll excuse me for one moment, I'm going to resend him the link so he can get in, because he's getting a message that the host already has another meeting scheduled, and I just want to resend him the link so he can get in. So just going to focus on that for the moment.
I'm in, Carl.
Okay, great. Terrific. Okay.
Sorry about the delay.
Okay. All right. So now we can focus on the business at hand.
And then before we do that, if you could identify yourself, sir, as well. And by the way, you were right on time, so you're fine.
Okay, thanks. Mike Evans from Mann Road Associates.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Hitchens, do we have any board exhibits at this time?
We do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to mark the following documents as exhibits for this hearing. As ZHB1 will be the proof of publication and legal notice for tonight's hearing. And ZHB2 will be a verification of posting of the property. And ZHB3 will be copies of the township website, the images specifically giving notice to both the public and the applicant regarding tonight's hearing and how they could connect and participate. ZHB4 will be a copy of the applicant's application itself. ZHB5 will be a copy of the public notice. Specifically, this is the written notice that was mailed to residents, as well as a copy of the parcel map and the residences that had received those notices. Finally, ZHB 6, unless Mr. Weiner, you have any objection, I was going to mark your exhibit packet that you had submitted as a part of your application. But if you prefer, I won't mark it and you can mark it as a part of your application.
Yeah, either one is fine with me. I intend to go through it in the testimony and mark each exhibit separately, but if you want to mark the packet as a whole, as a board exhibit, that's fine too.
Yeah, I'll just then mark it as a whole packet of ZHB 6, and this is a copy of the exhibit packet provided by the applicant. And I would note for the record that both the applicant's packet, exhibit packet, as well as the application itself were made publicly available on the township's website in advance of tonight's hearing. I have no further exhibits. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hitchens. All right, so we can go ahead and I'll turn it over to the applicant. One thing I will remind everybody of, if you are not speaking, I would ask that you go ahead and mute your microphone. That way, we don't get echoes. That way it's clear who's talking, okay? And go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening again. It's Carl.
Swear this in? Do you need me to swear the witness in?
Well, I'm the attorney, so I'm going to do a brief introduction, and then as soon as I'm done,
Oh, okay. I apologize.
I will ask you to swear my witness in. That's fine.
Okay, I thought you were going to start questions.
Yeah, okay, no. All right. All right, so again, Carl Weiner, the attorney representing Man Road Associates. Just to give the board some brief background on this matter before we get to the heart of the testimony. This property is located at the northwest intersection of Broad Street and Allentown Road. The property received a variance in 1988 to be occupied by a real estate office, and for many years was occupied by Continental Realty, as well as a title company and related services. A two-story building was built on the site and was built to look residential on the exterior, but has always been used for office purposes. In 2004, the variance was interpreted by the then township solicitor and township manager to allow a more general office use. And Evans Builders has been there since 2004, as well as on the first floor, as well as other office users. Since the property is isolated as to office use in terms of its location, and because the demand for offices has been steadily declining even before COVID, and that demand for office use has declined even further in the past year, the owner is seeking to allow the upstairs to be used for residential purposes, and specifically two-bedroom apartments. Having a mixed-use building will actually bring it closer to the immediate residential surroundings and certainly its underlying residential zoning. And as testimony will bear out, if you look at the surrounding area, just down the street from this property is Lehigh Valley Dairy, which is zoned LI. Catty corner to this property is a BP district where the Lansdale Medical office is located, and BP district allows a mixed-use building with both offices and residential. And a little bit up the street, north on Broad Street, and a little bit down south on Broad Street is a commercial district, which also allows a mixed use of office and residential. So what we are proposing is consistent with the surrounding area. And with that brief introduction, my witness this evening will be Michael Evans, who briefly introduced himself before, principal of Man Road Associates, and I will ask him to be sworn in at this point.
Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Good. Just state your name for the record, please, and just spell it.
Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, Evans, E-E-A.
Thank you.
Okay. And Michael, what is your relationship to Man Road Associates?
I'm a shareholder or a part owner.
Okay. And in the exhibit packet that I submitted to the board that I have listed, I'll ask to be marked as Exhibit A1. is a deed from South Broad Street, Inc. to Man Road Associates dated September 4th, 2003. And was that the deed by which Man Road Associates acquired ownership to this property?
Yes.
And can you please briefly describe the property that is the subject of this application?
It's a brick two-story building that we bought back in 2003 to move our real estate and building office from Willow Grove to the 920 South Broad Street location. And at that time, we moved and took possession of the first floor and ran.
I'm sorry, he's breaking up. I'm having difficulty understanding him.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
Michael, just speak slowly, because that way you are breaking up a little bit, and hopefully if you speak slowly, that'll allow the room to keep up with you.
I don't know where you lost me, but so 2004, we took our office from Willow Grove and moved it into the 9 South location. And we
I'm
have
sorry. Is anybody else having difficulty?
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit, Michael. And is there, you're using your computer, your computer audio?
No, I'm using my phone.
You're on your phone, okay, all right.
Carl, why don't if you have a better, why don't you go ahead and
Yeah,
say,
why don't I'll kind of go through the testimony and then have Michael affirm it. I think that'll be simpler. So just to be clear, as I mentioned before, this property is at the northwest intersection of Broad Street and Allentown Road. The property consists of 28,332 square feet. Is that correct?
correct?
And it is zoned R2. And as you said, there's an existing two-story building, and that building is 5,890 square feet, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and in the packet that I submitted and that you've had a chance to review, there is a photo of the site that shows this two-story residential looking building. And is that an accurate, I'll show this, is that an accurate depiction of your property?
Yes.
Okay, now we're okay, now we have screen sharing, great. Okay. And that is the building on the property, correct?
Correct.
And then if we go to A3, there's a photo of the actual site. Great. Okay, and that is is that an accurate depiction of the site on which the property is located?
Yes.
And there's a parking area that's shown on that, and that parking area consists of 24 spaces at about 5,000 square feet, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, currently in the building, you have your offices are on the first floor, correct?
Yes.
And on the second floor, there's a business that had been operating until COVID, is that correct?
Yes.
And generally, what has your experience been in trying to rent the second floor as an office use?
Over the years that we've been there, it has been difficult.
Okay, and why has it been difficult to get a tenant for that second floor?
To tell you the truth, I don't really know. I believe maybe the residential nature of the office building, not being in an office park, so to speak.
Okay. Now we've shown of the parking spaces, 24 parking spaces. At any one time, what are the typical number of parking spaces that are being used?
Currently from my and
Well,
four.
even when the building was fully occupied, when the office on the second floor was occupied and your offices, how many parking spaces were typically being used at any one time?
I mean, at most a third of the spaces.
Okay. And now you were proposing to maintain your office on the first floor, correct?
Yes.
And on the second floor, you're proposing 2 residential apartments that would each be approximately 1,000 square feet each, correct?
Yes.
And they would each have 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. Is that correct?
Yes,
And you are not proposing any exterior changes for the building, correct?
correct.
And if we go down to Exhibit A4, the use of the property before you acquired it was subject to a zoning variance to permit office use in 1988, correct?
Yes, correct.
Right. And then A5 is a memorandum that was written when you acquired the property to allow your offices to occupy the property and allow more general office use other than simply a real estate office. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, across going to A6, and there are 2 parts of A6. That's the zoning map, and then there's a blow up of the zoning map showing this area. And your property being located in the at the northwest corner of Broad Street and Allentown Road is zoned R2, correct?
Correct.
And catty corner to your office is actually zoned BP, and that's where Lansdale Medical Office is located. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then further up Broad Street from where your property is located, when I say up north on Broad Street, is a strip of C commercial. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then further south on Broad Street from your building is another C commercial district. Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Now, why are you proposing 2 residential apartments for the second floor instead of 1?
Because of the large amount of space available on the second floor of the office.
Okay. So that if you just had 1 apartment, it would be a 2,000 square foot apartment. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be correct. Rather large for a 2-bedroom apartment.
All right. And again, based on the fact that there are 24 parking spaces, are you prepared to designate a minimum of 4 of those spaces, 2 each for each apartment within the parking lot on the site?
Yes.
And would you, there was some discussion when we were in front of the plan committee regarding the trash cans, which are at the entrance, kind of blocking the entrance to the parking lot off of Broad Street. First of all, why are those trash containers located there?
So when we bought the building back in 2003 and took occupancy of it in 2004, that lane was open so that you could pull in from either Broad Street, the parking lot, or you can pull in from the other on.
All right. Okay, let me. I know the court part is struggling with this, and I understand that. So, yes, going back to A3, A2, if you would.
Where do you go to meet somebody? Like friends.
Okay, so those originally, when you acquired the property, you found that that it's off of Broad Street was being used as kind of a high-speed cut-through from Broad Street to Allentown Road, so people could avoid the light at Allentown Road and Broad Street. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And in fact, there was a serious accident on your property due to that cut-through, correct?
Correct.
All right. So you placed the trash containers to stop people from using that parking lot as a cut-through, correct?
Correct.
Based on comments that we received from the plan committee review, that you propose to enclose those trash containers in a more aesthetic and residential looking configuration, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And if you are permitted to have a residential use in this property, there will actually be potentially less parking than there would be at this office use based on the ratio that's required for apartments versus office. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And there would also be less traffic generated by the use on the second floor than there would be from a potential office use that might take up the entire second floor. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
All right, and there would not be any adverse impact on surrounding properties because there'd be no change in the exterior of the building and actually a reduced intensity of use in going to residential as opposed to office. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Okay, so does anybody on the board have any questions at this point?
I do. Carl or Mark, how many parking spaces are there total?
24.
24. And how many employees within the man
Three.
organization?
Three.
So how many? 3. So normally you'd have 3 cars. in the
Right, and
parking
even
lot?
when the upstairs, I know it was hard to hear, even when the upstairs was being utilized, it might have been another 3 or 4. Never
Okay,
close.
that's all right. I'm very familiar with the
Right.
site, so, yeah, okay,
Right.
thanks.
I have a question for Mr. Weiner and Mr. Evans, and that has to do with the fact that maybe this was shown to the planning commission, but since we didn't see any kind of plans for this, is there a separate entrance for the second floor?
Yeah, there actually is proposed to be separate entrances for the apartments. Correct, yes.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you said there would be no external changes to the building. So is there already an entrance, like is there a hallway on the first floor and then you would go to the second floor? Or is there like a back entrance? I'm just trying to figure this out.
Right. Mike, can you answer that?
There's already 2 existing second floor entrances, one in the front, one in the rear.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hitchens, do you have any questions?
I do, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Weiner, the applicant, just so that I have it clear, so if I'm understanding your testimony correctly, you're offering as a proposed condition, if the board were to grant it, that you would agree to designate 2 parking spaces for each unit on the second floor within the existing parking field. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct.
Okay, and you're also offering as a proposed condition, again, if the board should approve it, that you would agree to essentially move the existing trash facilities into a trash enclosure, and you'd get whatever permits you'd need to in order to construct or locate that enclosure, but that you would at least put them into some appropriate enclosure as determined by the township. Is that correct?
That's correct. But just to be clear, they would remain blocking that entrance because it is critical to stop that cut through.
I'm glad you, and this is why I'm asking that question. I'm just curious, was there any reason why the applicant doesn't just simply close off that entrance altogether? Or was that discussed at all at the planning commission about just eliminating that entrance entirely?
So originally it was blocked off in a different way, and somebody, it was, in other words, like chained across, and a motorcycle came through, did not see the chain, and there was a serious accident as a result of that. So the applicant decided to put something more visible and bigger to block that location to avoid any future accidents. That is what had happened, and that's the history of this.
No, fair enough. So would the enclosure you're proposing, would essentially that be a permanent structure then in the middle of that driveway entrance?
That is something we can work out with the township. Mike, I don't know if you have any specific ideas about that.
I mean, I can move it if they want, or I can make it there. It doesn't matter either way to me.
And as you know, Mr. Weiner and the applicant, I mean, it's not typically the zoning hearing board's purview to decide, any saldo or anything like that. But I'm just trying to think practically here that if you're putting a enclosure there in the middle of a driveway entrance, if it's going to be permanent, it would seem that, you might just ultimately want to just, kind of close off that driveway entrance there if you're not actually using it and you don't want anybody to get injured. But I understand there's an expense difference probably between closing that off versus constructing a permanent enclosure there.
Right. So we will work with township staff to come up with something that's appropriate.
Okay.
Yes.
If I could say, have you thought about stanchions that can then be unlocked in case the fire company needed to get to the building from that side? And rather than building something permanent or closing it off completely, has that been thought about at all?
Honestly, specifically, we have not gone into that detail. The plan committee, raised the issue just aesthetically, if we could move the trash cans or do something with it. We agreed to do some sort of a more aesthetically pleasing enclosure. But again, we are willing to have discussions with township staff as to what's most appropriate there.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Weiner, would you be okay if the board were to approve that as a condition, it would be, you would put the appropriate enclosure for your trash, but you would also agree to work with, not necessarily agree, but just to work with the township to address any cut-through concerns related to that driveway, whatever solution the two of you come to. Again, we're not deciding it, just that you'd agree to have that conversation.
Okay. Michael, do you have any objection to that?
No, I agree.
Right. And the last question I have for you, Mr. Weiner, and the applicant, I'm looking at the photographs that you had submitted that I put up on the screen, which I'm happy to do again. And I was comparing that to the prior zoning determination that talked about various signage. I didn't see the same signage that seems to be approved. Is the applicant actually using the current signage that was previously approved, or are they using a different form of signage for their existing office space?
That question didn't come up. Michael, do you know?
We're using, it should be existing.
And I'm not suggesting at all that you are all not in compliance, just trying to, is this a restart of basically this is how you're going to use it going forward, or would there be an opportunity, or would there be a possibility that, 5 or 10 years down the road, you would decide that you want to go back to having an office space and want to revert back to the prior zoning determination? Because this board might want to say, all right, well, this is your new approval, that if you ever want to go back to an office space on the second floor, you'd have to come back in for approval again for that. That's what I'm trying to get at.
I would agree with that. It's going to be my new forever approval and use.
So in the event that you would agree that in the event you ever change the use again, you would be okay with having to come back to get that approval again?
Yes.
Okay. Those were all my questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hitchens. I just want to make sure, does anybody else have any other questions before? Okay.
This is just one logistical question, Mark. With regards to the pickup of the trash, I mean, I know trash people come in there now, but now you're going to have 2 residents upstairs if this is approved. Will the trash truck go off of Broad Street into the parking lot, or will it remain on Broad Street to pick up, especially at that turn?
Michael, do you know? How is your?
Right now, we have a trash truck in from Allentown and drives through the parking lot to pick up.
So it does come into the parking lot now, Mark?
Yes.
Then I probably don't see that changing at all. I was just thinking of what Broad Street's like, especially in rush hour traffic, and that right turn and the straight on. You think the trash does it during the day when the traffic's not as prominent as in rush hour, but we all know that the trash can be late too. It's just a logistical question because of the safety issue.
Yeah, right now they enter from Allentown and come through the parking lot.
Thank you.
Alrighty. And then do any of the parties want to offer any other testimony before we go ahead to public comment?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Reeker, do you have anything you would like to add? I don't want to forget you.
Thank you, Mark. No, nothing additional.
All right, thank you. Okay. So if there's no further evidence to be presented by the parties, so now we're going to move ahead to public comment. Do we have anybody on the phone for public comment at this point?
There's no public comment.
All right, great. Thank you. And Mr. Rieger, can you confirm whether the township received any public comment in writing about this application?
I can confirm that neither Megan Weaver, the township assistant manager, nor myself have received any comments relative to this evening's application.
Great, thank you. All right. So since we don't have any public comment, would anyone like to say anything before we go ahead and close the hearing? All right, so hearing none, I will now close this hearing. Now, would a member like to make a motion here? When Patrick, you can propose a motion potentially, or would anyone like to go into executive session?
Let's get it.
So if no member would like to make a motion to go into executive session, Mr. Connolly, then would a member of the board like to make a motion on hearing number 21-01, Man Road Associates of 920 South Broad Street, Lansdale, PA, to approve a variance from section 195-12A to convert the second floor of the existing building for use as two-bedroom, one-bath apartments, based off of the testimony and exhibits presented, including the following conditions. 1, that the applicant will provide 2 designated parking spaces for each proposed unit within the existing parking field. 2, that the applicant will provide or will make the appropriate trash enclosure for the existing trash facilities and obtain any required permits as required by the township. And 3, will work with the township with regard to any appropriate safety measures that may be needed for the cut through off of Broad Street in the existing parking field.
Oh, Mr. Hitchens, do we want to include, do we need to include a condition about that this is going to basically, if they want to change it back to business, that they would have to come back before the board?
And the condition that this would be the going forward use of the property, that in the event that there would be any further changes of the use that would not be permitted, they would have to come back for approval. So with that in mind, would any member of the board like to make that motion?
Oh, Mr. Ferguson, you're muted.
I will make that motion as Patrick has outlined.
Second,
Okay, so we have the motion that Patrick outlined with regard to hearing number 2101. And then we have a second. So all in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. So the motion is granted. The application is granted. And then we'll go ahead and we'll be drafting out a formal decision for review. All right. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So at this point, I guess we're ready to adjourn. So our next scheduled meeting is for Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. That's at 7 p.m. And given the continued COVID emergency, we will be meeting electronically as well. So would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn to the next regularly scheduled meeting?
I make a motion to adjourn to the February meeting.
Okay.
I second that.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes so have it. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you.